Thanks very much. I'd like to welcome everyone to our webinar entitled Alumni Perspectives on Artificial Intelligence Innovation. Artificial intelligence is top of the mind for many people. People are asking, how is it going to impact my current position? What do I need to know to get that promotion or next job? What if someone asks for an AI-related information and I'm not ready to answer? How do I, a critically thinking Bates alumni or student, without a deep technical background, expand my knowledge and competency? Today, we're going to touch on many of those questions from a Bates alumni or student perspective. Our goal is to share insights, tips, and strategies that our esteemed alumni and Digital Computational Studies Department Chair suggest. We see this as a continuing journey. We have a few objectives. We're going to be sharing how we can help Bates alumni and students to be competitive in their careers regarding artificial intelligence. We want to help keep Batesies competitive in their career for the use of AI. Also, understand tools and resources available that a Bates liberal arts graduate might best have to engage. What we're going to do is we're going to ask our panelists to share a brief background of themselves and how AI and Bates have shaped their careers. We'll have 2 rounds of questions. And oh, by the way, Alex Hahn from the Alumni Council is going to be taking your questions via the chat, which is open. After that, we're going to have questions from the field that Alex will moderate. Alex and I will moderate. There's going to be, towards the end, we're going to have a survey. It's going to allow for additional questions, and our goal is to be able to answer all those questions, whether it be in this forum or after the fact. And to help that, to that end, Bates is setting up a LinkedIn Bates AI group that we'll be moderating and having a chance to follow up on. And then, of course, there's going to be a survey and then a link to the recording for those folks that might have missed it. So what I'd like to first do is introduce the first round of folks, our panelists. And let me start off with Carrie, Dr. Eaton.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. It's great to see and meet so many people and work with a whole group of really amazing alum. It's wonderful to get to know you all better. My name is Carrie Lee Eaton. I have been a full-time faculty person for 16 years, though this is my 8th year here at Bates. And it is my first year as chair of the Digital and Computational Studies Department, and the first year that our department has a brand new Digital and Computational Studies major. So that's really exciting news. It's a great time to be here, also in the middle of this sort of AI revolution and discussion and everything else. In terms of the hats that I'm wearing today, partly it's as chair, partly it's as Bates professor. My own background is in modeling and adaptive systems, and over the years have developed a research program in what's called socio-technological systems, so the relationship between the social and the technical, as well as what quantitative and computational education look like for this new future. And I teach and do some projects that are related to AI, particularly in AI in making social impact, positive social impact, and also thinking about AI literacy and what are the skills you need to understand AI more.
Thank you, Carrie. Next is Kyle Flaherty, class of 97.
Scott, thank you, and the panel, thank you. I'm super excited to be here. As you said, I graduated from Bates in 97, along with Alex Hahn, who's with us as well. And, you know, what I studied at Bates was political science. And for me, that was really the study of people and how they communicate, how they organize, how they exercise power. And while that's mostly used in government, you know, I went into marketing, and I use that every single day of what I'm doing. And as, you know, my 25 plus years in technology and cybersecurity specifically, AI has been and has become really, really important to everything that we do, and not just in terms of how we work every day, but also how we keep ourselves secure every day. So I'm super excited to kind of dive into that with all of you throughout this session.
Great. Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate that. Steve, class of '09.
Hi, folks. My name is Steve Coupe, based in New York, New York, class of '09. Lived in Smith South my freshman year. Graduated with a degree in economics with a minor in math. I work in the finance space. I started my career working at investment banks on trading floors in the technology space, supporting traders in the applications they used. I swam around the industry. I took a 4-year sabbatical and went into the culinary arts. I'm also a chef and do catering and pop-up dinners focused around cuisines of the Black diaspora and storytelling. And now I work at JP Morgan, just hit my 5-year anniversary a couple weekends ago. And I work on a team that serves the whole bank, thinking about data and AI solutions and features that we roll out to all of our lines of businesses based on their demand. And how AI has changed my work. AI has, like Kyle alluded to, AI has changed my digital posture in a way. AI has increased the risks that I encounter digitally, the risks of false information, of cyber attacks, and and people trying to maybe gain my information. At the same time, AI has made me more secure, more productive, like having a personal assistant in my pocket, in both personal life and in work. In work specifically, with the things that we do when AI is incorporated, it brings more power to the situation. It brings more productivity and efficiency. It also means that it brings a bit more room of failure if not managed correctly. So AI has quickly become a new normal in my industry. It's not something foreign. It's something that touches everybody, whether they consider themselves technical or not. So AI, my analogy, it has become like the new ATM. The way that you only had human tellers and you had ATM. Now everyone uses an ATM. AI is a tool that operates in the same fashion.
Great. Good. Thank you, Steve. Joselle, class of '01.
Hello, everyone. My name is Giselle Del Campo Gautam. I studied economics and East Asian studies at Bates. I'm so delighted to be here. And so, career-wise, I started my career in finance, and I spent years in management consulting, advising companies on M&A and innovation and essentially growth, and particularly around the industries of financial services and technology. So I think merging those two together, I've been in the AI world for quite some time. And what I'd say is the skills that I learned at Bates, primarily merging those two fields of economics, which is, I would say, more technical, and East Asian studies, which was kind of my love for literature and critical thinking, was to basically ask better questions, how to think more critically, and also how to communicate in a way that was clear and to get my ideas across. And I think those foundational skill sets, plus starting my career in finance, eventually led me to PwC, where I started out as a management consultant and then got a promotion to essentially start the innovation incubator there, focused on thinking about what does the future look like for global banks, and from my perspective, it was around global economies. And so I would say that was kind of my first really deep dive into technologies such as AI and how they impact day-to-day lives. I think Steve brought up the idea of the ATM, and I really love that analogy because before, these kind of technologies were seen more as back office. We didn't see them in our day-to-day world as they do today. And so that's very exciting and also a lot of change. And that experience eventually led me to leading LinkedIn's largest product and engineering organizations, where I oversaw what we grew to be a $7 billion AI-driven portfolio, and being the engine behind the really talented engineers building the future of that platform. So if you've ever looked for a job or learned something on LinkedIn, that was the team that I was working on. And kind of, I would say my area of interest around where this all merges is kind of strategy, leadership, and AI, and how that's changing the way we lead in organizations. And I sit in Silicon Valley, and I feel this kind of great need to, having the perspectives of sitting in those leadership rooms and, asking the questions around how do we ensure that we have equity, we have inclusion, and we think about problem statements that are far beyond our current use of a technology. So I'll cap off my introduction with, my path isn't about being the most technical person in the room. It was kind of being like the most critical thinker in the room, and it's really paid off. And so that's why this topic resonates with me, and I'm so delighted to be here today.
Great, great. Thank you, Giselle. Appreciate that. Also, another moderator is Alex Hahn, class of 97.
Yep. Thanks, Chuck. Well, we're super excited about the webinar today. Just as background, it's sponsored by the Bates College Alumni Council and our Professional Development Committee. If you're asking yourself, what is the Bates College Alumni Council? The Alumni Council is a representative body of the Bates College Alumni Association. We are comprised of about 25 passionate Bates College alumni from all different class years. And the role of the Alumni Council is really to advise and counsel Bates College regarding alumni engagement. And we also serve as that liaison between the alumni and the college and organize webinars like these. This is the first in a series of webinars. So hope you enjoy this one. And I'll turn it back over to Chuck, and we will get into some questions with our esteemed panelists. And just a reminder, as you're listening to some of these responses, feel free to throw any additional questions in the chat, and we will get to them at the end of this webinar.
Great, great. Thanks very much, Alex. And once again, I'm Chuck James, class of 78. I was an economics major, and I'm probably older than everybody on this webinar. We used to timeshare at Dartmouth, and I graduated Bates before cell phones, personal computers, etc. So it was. I remember Professor Reed showed me right-hand justification on the mainframe to Dartmouth, and I got really excited about that. So it's Bates has come a long way since I got to Bates 51 years ago. Okay, here's our first round. Joselle, for folks who don't come from technical backgrounds, why is it essential to care about AI?
Great question. I would say that, Chuck, I'd start off by saying I'm probably the model for being a person who is a non-technical person and then having led an engineering team. And so I would say that it's so important now. And I think the first principle thinking of artificial intelligence is that to not think about it as a technical discipline. It's becoming the backbone of how we use technology, and also how we communicate in our day-to-day lives, and how value is created. So I'll share a quick stat that I think is so fascinating. And it's according to McKinsey that generative AI is projected to add 2.6 to 4.4 trillion, that's with a T, in economic value every year. So I've been in the tech space and also in working in tech and other industries. That is not a technology trend. That's an economic transformation. So for you econ nerds like me, that's a really fascinating thing in terms of thinking about how that changes not only our day-to-day lives or businesses, but how it's shaping the economy. And I would also add kind of three things that, so what does that translate for us as day-to-day Bates alums, or maybe if you're a student, and why it matters whether you're an engineer or not? I would say three things. The first one is AI is in everything. So it powers the tools that we use every day, whether you're searching something in your day-to-day work, or maybe you have kind of smart appliances at home. It feels like these days avoiding AI would take much more great effort than it is to, engage with it. And I think the second thing would be everyone is using it. I think sometimes when we think about technology historically, it's around kind of the businesses and the backbone of businesses. But now this is different. Consumers like you and I, companies and entire industries. I've mentioned I spent my career mostly in financial services. these types of technologies were thought about more as a back end process versus something that was front end that could be used to power experiences. And an interesting stat that I love is that when OpenAI, back in I think it was November 2022, first released ChatGPT, it hit 100 million users in 2 months. And it took Facebook 2 years to get to that many users for a product. So this is prolific, and the distribution is really phenomenal. And I think the third thing that I would say around why this matters is AI is accessible everywhere. So if you have Wi-Fi, you have access to world-class AI, world-class information. And so for me, that's why AI literacy is no longer a technical skill that's left to your, if you're working with engineers or coders, it is something that's front and center. It is a top of mind leadership skill, and it's a top of mind kind of future of work skill.
Gotcha. Good, good. Thank you, Joseph. I appreciate that perspective. Thank you very much. Hey, Kyle, what do you see as impact on the job market, in particular, entry-level positions in all areas?
That's great. I think the way I position this, and not just to like groups like this, but my oldest son is a sophomore. Unfortunately, he had to go to Boston College. Big disappointment in our family. But what's happened is that entry level kind of bottom rung, right? It's not being eliminated, right? It's being completely redefined. So when I graduated, a little after you, Chuck, right? We still didn't have personal computers or mobile phones or whatnot, right? But it's like over the past 20 years, we've seen those entry level tasks of new grads or someone even shifting into a new career, right? Whether it was drafting emails or basic data entry, simple research, project management, etc. Those are now being handed to AI agents for sure. We are doing that on my global team every single day, right? That is happening, but it's not eliminating the jobs necessarily. It's just changing them very, very dramatically. We can certainly talk about job elimination. That's probably an entire, separate webinar overall. So I see it as not a door closing, but kind of like a floor rising overall. So there's this fact that we now look for when I'm hiring people across the globe is I'm not necessarily looking for that junior kind of task person who we would have looked for maybe even 6 years ago. To Joselle's point, it's like it's only been 3 years since this became really, really mainstream. Overall, we're looking for more of that junior strategist. And to put it super bluntly for folks, like I'm not hiring hands, I'm hiring heads. And that's where I think a liberal arts education, to kind of bring it back to a lot of the folks that are on this, of like that allows you and gives you a level up when you figure out how to use AI properly to actually take it and use it to your advantage overall. So I'm looking for people on my team. And again, I lead marketing teams for cybersecurity companies. Like, yeah, I want you to use AI to go from writing 10 social media posts to writing 50. That's great. Anyone can do that. But how are you writing the prompt? How are you using the tools? How are you actually injecting human, abilities into that so that you're making the right decision for my brand as you bring that out to the market overall? So, when I'm hiring now, I look for a person who, yes, they're probably using AI because, as Joselle pointed out, we're all using it, whether you like it or not. You're definitely using it. But show me kind of your prompts. Show me like how you're injecting your own kind of thought pattern into those things to actually rise above the other candidates for you. So we're actually seeing, creative critical thinkers now rise above in those entry level positions versus when, quite frankly, it was a little bit harder for those folks 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Gotcha. That's good. I appreciate that. I wrote that quote down. I'm not hiring hands, I'm hiring heads. I like that. I like
There you
that.
go.
That's good. Good, good. Thank you. Carrie, professor, chair of the department. Welcome, by the way. Welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We needed DCS to be up there. We're tired of losing people to Bowdoin and Colby with their IT majors and things like that. So thank you. Thank you. Carrie, how can someone deal with AI limitations, failures, which are currently a function of how AI is designed, but have implications for both good and detrimental impact?
Yeah. I mean, it's a big question. I'm doing the professor thing and like taking notes on everybody's other comments because everybody's been saying such good things. You know, I think, you know, going back to the strategy, you know, comment, it's that next level thinking. It's not just, okay, AI as a tool, but if we understand deeply, a little bit deeply, 30 minutes deeply about, you know, what is really running AI? And if you start asking, well, what makes AI work the way it does, then you can use it much more effectively to do whatever you need to do, whether that is apparently to do good or to do evil, you know, that's maybe another part of my comment. But for example, I've heard a lot of folks describe ChatGPT as something like, oh, well, it just knows everything out there and it's just going to gather all the best responses and give me the best information. And actually, that's like possibly a really incorrect analogy. And the reason why I worry about that analogy, this kind of like next generation Google, well, it's still why I worry about conceptualizing generative AI tools in this way is that really what's happening is it's using some set of data. It's really understanding how that's underlyingly connected and starting to make patterns, and then will respond according to what it detects as the predominant connections in those patterns. So that's still an oversimplification, but really it's a probability game. It's a dice game. It's, you know, how many things do we structurally see these things together, or these words together, or these ideas together, or these pixels together. And so just knowing a little more nuance like that helps us understand, like when I was, you know, we had that big, huge lotto drawing, and I'm like, okay, how do I find, you know, how do I view the lotto drawing? So I Google, you know, search it. Of course, a Gemini, you know, thing pops up, and it's like, here are the lotto numbers for today. Well, no, there were no lotto numbers for today. That never happened. That's not the best information across the internet. That's some probability that lotto numbers, these will be lotto numbers that will be chosen today, said in a very authoritative voice that they're already chosen, right? So when we understand a little bit about why, when we understand a little bit about the fact that it's a probability system, when we understand a little bit more about the fact that it really wants to please you and sound authoritative and agree with you, these are all things that then we can use to be able to either use it more effectively, critique it, strategize how it's going to fit into our future more intelligently. So I think knowing a little bit about those technical whys help us, being able to like articulate, oh, maybe I should look for some positives with some negatives or vice versa. You know, knowing that I'm not going to always take everything at face value, especially when somebody's trying to sell me a product. No offense to the marketing teams out there, but let me just dig a little more. Let me ask a couple more questions about, you know, who's selling this to me and why, and what are the economics of this product. And then, you know, stepping back, you know, that's all part of, you know, digging in is part of creating a picture that's like a bigger picture of from systems to individual, from histories, or, you know, as Giselle was saying, to possible futures that you can imagine. So I think it's this asking questions, all that critical thinking.
Gotcha. Good, Carrie. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, Steve, a lot of questions about getting prepared, etc. What's the best way for a Batesy to learn more? Batesy especially. What's the best process, place, classes, etc. to get those skills?
Yeah, of course. Since I've graduated Bates, I've been a huge fan of learning for free. I don't know if that, you know, tuition taught me a lesson. Just kidding. But there's so many resources where you could learn for free. So number one is Coursera, an online learning platform. LinkedIn has something similar. I've personally learned so much on Coursera. I just dropped a link in the chat here. And, you know, you could take classes that are just as simple as a 10-minute video presentation on AI, you know, on data being the foundation of AI. And then Coursera as well, you can go as complex as doing 6 months specialization that are sets of courses, you know, and it's self-paced 4 to 6 weeks at a time. They enable a way for you to get a certificate if you pay, but you could also audit courses for free. I think a lot of people don't know that about the Coursera platform. So I've personally been on there learned a ton of topics for free. That's where I went when I first wanted to start learning about data and AI. I highly, highly recommend. And I think edx.org is another online learning platform. And like I mentioned, LinkedIn has one. Another thing I would recommend for those of us who like to hold physical things, a book, Data Decoded by Tiffany Perkins Munn, PhD. I'm biased because I know Tiffany personally through JPMC. She's a great leader in the data and AI space. But this book I bought and I read, and it lays out the data and AI landscape in very, very simple language. She mentions in the book her target audience is anyone, teacher, barista, dog walker, anyone that's just curious about all these headlines and buzzwords that are happening all around them. It's a great, very, very grounded read.
Excellent.
And so then for folks who want to be in the industry, I would say learn by doing, take on side projects, find meetup events, webinars in your city, in your town, online. LinkedIn now has become a huge social media platform. So following people on there, thought leaders, really helps on LinkedIn. And just getting yourself out there and engaging in the discourse with folks because it does affect everyone.
Great, good. Thank you, Steve. And just a couple things. One, I appreciate you putting in Coursera. They're currently running a promo, whatever. It's a four classes, 4 hours. It expires in like a week or so. But if you can get that done, there's no charge. And then, of course, after that, if you don't get it done, they start charging you. That's one thing. Also, a lot of library systems like mine here in Broward County, South Florida, offer LinkedIn Learning for free. You just have to navigate through the library. So if your local library has an online type of presence, you can very often go and get onto LinkedIn Learning that way for free. Take all the classes. There's tons. There's thousands of AI-related classes inside of LinkedIn Learning. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Steve. Okay, round two, before we go to the questions via chat. Kyle, what user skills in AI do you look for when hiring? We talked about that a little bit. And also, what catches your eye during the interview process?
Good one. So I think there's a few things I'd say there, and I saw some questions actually too that I know I know Alex is gonna ask later, so maybe this will answer some of those as well. So I think there's kind of, and it's probably just going a little deeper into what I mentioned earlier. There's the concept of kind of AI fluency and AI tooltip knowledge, right? And I think like Steve hit on a lot of really great resources there that can help with both of those. Overall, like I don't really care about if you know a specific tool, right? Like those change a lot. And we're about to see a pretty large kind of shift in tool sets overall, whether it's AI as a whole or Gen AI, like there's going to be a major, major shift there. So you have to be ready and understand like, all right, how do I get to prompt engineering really, really well? Like Joselle hit on earlier, like you don't need to be a technologist. I never wrote a line of code in college. Like that wasn't what I studied overall. I'm a marketer, but like I now know and have to learn kind of how to not only talk to these things, ask them the right questions, train them the right way, but also have a really good understanding of how they work behind the scenes, right? Because they are fallible. They do things like hallucinate. They do things that will let you kind of share information you shouldn't. I'm a security person at the end of the day, and I know that's not what this is about, but don't put anything that you wouldn't want to see somewhere else into any of these AI models, Gen AI or other. Like it's super important to understand those things overall. And so getting back to your direct question, Chuck, like I think that there's this thing that kind of we talk about of the humanity hedge, right? Of yes, AI is there, Gen AI is there, we're using all of these things overall, but humanity like still remains a premium skill. And so if you're looking for a job or you're looking to shift careers or whatnot, and it's why I continue to go back to liberal arts education being a really great way to take advantage of this new technology, is like you now have the capability to kind of put the suggestions and the work and however you're coding this AI into kind of a human aspect overall. And that's what I look for when I'm interviewing someone, right? It's like, again, it's not, don't show me that you're 82% more effective and efficient and all those things. It's like, all right, what human element are you putting into these? What are the prompts that you're doing? What are the words that you actually are building and putting out there to allow you to do those things overall? That's going to tell me way more about your critical thinking and your ability to adapt in the real world of kind of, the corporate real world overall. That's super important. And then the last thing I do look for, just to be, is security literacy and privacy literacy. Like, I do think that, has become more and more important, especially for people who are digital natives, who kind of have grown up in an era where they shared everything. That is becoming more and more. I don't want to use the word dangerous because it's not like necessarily the word that I'm looking, but there's really this precipice now of AI taking all of this data, taking all of this information, and you have to be so much more intelligent. And so I ask questions about security literacy all the time, even when I'm just hiring a general marketer, because I do think that just tells me a lot about how they think about technology as a
Right.
whole.
Okay, good, Carl. Thank you very much. Hey, Steve, over the next 3 years, what key skills do you see? If you can look in your crystal ball with everything moving so fast.
Yeah, I think, well, the good answer is, as graduates of a liberal arts college, I think folks in this room would be well positioned. I think a key skill is discernment. Knowing how to discern through information, have some grounded knowledge when interacting with specifically these chatbots, on the subject that you're interacting about. So don't let AI blindly teach you. I've found these chatbots, when they're wrong in quite a nuanced way, both with any topic. I've used it to scale up food recipes for hundreds of people. I've used it for, kind of tech research. And especially when it comes to kind of adding up things, it tends to falter. So definitely have a sense of discernment, and have a habit of verifying information. And it's actually a pet peeve of mine, these days when people tell you their opinions or facts, they'll tell you, oh, do your research. And I've always wondered, what does that mean? Do I Google and then I find a Reddit thread, or, a thread of a forum that one of us could have just kind of uploaded? And I know back in my Bates days, it was about Wikipedia. Oh, anyone could update Wikipedia. So, even when you go to Wikipedia, you go to the source that it's citing. And so, even with these chatbots, if you just ask it, where did you find that information, or verify, you'll watch it take a step back and say, oh, well, actually, I'm sorry, the sky is not yellow. And so discernment is really key here. There was an article recently I read on this idea of critical ignoring. I thought was pretty fascinating. And just, now we're overloaded with information. So as you parse this information, it's up to you to determine what rabbit hole you want to run down. It's up to you to resist low quality information. I mean, AI could write you a dissertation on how much wood a woodchuck can chuck. Are you going to sit there and read the dissertation, and not to do a play on words, Chuck, on your name here?
Oh,
Just tons of information come out of these chatbots with just one sentence of input. And so critical ignoring, and I think that could go for social media, and everything. And it's not the same as putting your head in the sand. It's not ignoring everything around you, especially in the world that we're in, but it's understanding that today's day and age requires me to put my mind in a very focused way towards very important topics. So by default, that means I'm actively ignoring other things. And I think when interacting with AI and these chatbots, that's really important. And so, yeah, don't run down every rabbit hole. And both of these pillars have to be grounded in empathy. Empathy and tolerating diverse viewpoints, and maybe seeing the other person's perspective, especially because when you interact with AI, you're interacting with a robot, microchips, electricity. And so, hold on to your humanity. That empathy that we've learned by being around diverse majors in liberal arts college, I think is crucial in this day and age.
excellent.
And curiosity, of course, always curiosity.
Excellent, Steve. Thank you. Okay, two more questions. One to Joselle, one to Carrie. Joselle, let's assume everyone in this room has baseline AI literacy. In a world that knowledge is becoming universal, how do you demonstrate that you can remain competitive in the marketplace? How do you compete against, those people down the hall, et cetera, at your firm? How do you do that?
Chuck, that's a billion-dollar question. And So there's so many things that Kyle and Steve were sharing that are kind of part of the mental model personally for me, and I'll kind of share the way I think about learning in general when I think about what the future looks like. And so I think first mental model is be an Olympic learner. And what I mean by that is this is not the time to wait for permission to grow. Uh, there's a lot of change happening, and what I see on like two tiers, I'm oversimplifying this, but on one tier of you've got your kind of like new grads, new young professionals, and then your more expert folks who have been in fields and industries. We are impacted equally. And I'll share a quick anecdote where, I mentioned I'm a non-engineer leading a group of leaders in engineering. And we had a meetup a few months ago. And so I asked him, hey, what are you guys doing about AI? Basically, similar questions that we're tackling today. And one of the folks that I work with, he's been an engineer all of his life, all of his career. And basically, he said to me, well, Giselle, I'm learning about the intricacies of prompt engineering. And I said, really? Like, you don't know? Like, that is so, my mind is blown because I would think that you were going to do something, oh, I don't know, like just different, not that. And I thought, I went down that line of thinking simply because I was taking a class on prompt engineering. And so I think we have such an opportunity to level the playing field because this is all new topics for us as a society. And so I think that kind of being an Olympic learner mental model becomes your competitive advantage. And the one thing that I would add here also is don't only think about learning the technical skills. Also, I think the most important things, Kyle, Steve, and Carrie mentioned this. It is critical thinking, and I love that kind of term. I wrote it down, critically ignoring, which the assumption behind that is you're actually reading things and synthesizing for yourself. And those are skill sets that no free AI course will teach you. You will have to take other disciplines. And so I would encourage, like a two-tiered approach, like how to use the tools, but also what makes you differentiated in the way you think, the way you communicate, and the way you deliver information. And I think the second mental model is learn by doing. I think one of the panelists mentioned that there's, like different courses. There's also there's a plethora of information, but I would encourage you to take, and you're probably already doing this, pick one of the generative AI tools and just do it. Learn with it, speak to it. And that's how you stay competitive daily. That's how you get hired on Kyle's team because you can show him, like, hey, here's what I built overnight, which I couldn't do 2 nights ago. And so I think that just really shows curiosity and adaptation and innovation with the times. And I think the third kind of mental model is learn the new ways of building. And what I mean by that is not only in technology or if you're responsible for, building products, but there's an engine behind those products. I'm kind of the model for that, right? There's a team that builds, and there's someone like me who thinks about is this valuable? Who's going to buy it? And how do we get to really great ROI so that we can have a sustainable business? And I love this stat that only 0.3% of the world can code. So that means the question is, then what is everyone else doing? And I would love for you, and particularly Batesies, to think about that question. And how do you differentiate yourself? How do you think about, building in new ways, not building, the next prompt or an even better prompt, but how do you build interesting businesses? How do you build interesting organizations? Or how do you, I think to Carrie's work, how do you make more impactful contributions with a body of knowledge that both technical and non-technical?
Gotcha. Good. Thank you, Giselle. Good, good. Okay, last question before we get to the chat. And by the way, there's a lot of great detail in the chat, a lot of good tips, information. The Bates Libraries weighed in. The Center for Purposeful Work is weighed in. So we a lot of smart people that are sharing some opinions, asking some questions, etc. So last question, Carrie, how can Bates alumni lend a helping hand to ensure opportunities in regard to artificial intelligence?
Yeah. So, oh man, I just like, yeah, plus one on what everybody said. I feel like what I want to do is bottle what all of these great, successful professionals, Batesies, are doing, and how the liberal arts education has been so important in what we view as just a technical world. And then I want to give that to all of our DCS students because we deal with like really interesting students that are on these paths that are econ or sociology or education or history or all over the place, and then they come to a DCS class and they're wait this might have value to what I'm doing, or this could give me a little plus, and it's not hard convincing those students, like, come with a content thing that you're passionate about, come with that the willingness to read a little bit more. But some students come to us and they're like, I just want to learn how to program. And I would love to say, like, yeah, but and then what? And like, what are you going to do with that? And how is that going to make a difference? And how is that going to make you stand out? And how are you going to do it better than just Claude or something else, right?
Right.
Oh yeah, man, Giselle, just come hang out in my class any day. That's an open invitation. I teach one that's a calling bull, and it's a gentle introduction to programming, but it's also critical information literacy. And I wish that everybody could take it. It would be my dream. But I think I have been worried about what that digital entry job looks like, and where it exists in all these professions and how you get into it. And so I just like keep working with Purposeful Work Alumni Organization, make those doors open so that students can come and shadow, especially, our new DCS students. Like, if we didn't have DCS majors before, who do they shadow, right? And so, especially if you found yourself in this new kind of career, or you happen to be hiring these people, just keep working to make sure that our alum have some interest, or maybe you work in a particular area and you're like, hey, if there's somebody who happens to be a triple major between French and, I don't know, history and DCS, let me know. I want, like, whatever the combination that makes you the unique you could be inspiring or working with somebody else to help them work through their career path, and giving a sounding board to how do they leverage that liberal arts education as that big asset to this. Like, DCS, we feel, has something special to offer beyond just a CS program. We feel like carries that interdisciplinary and inclusive invitation, that I think will make our students, those lifelong learners, those critical inquirers, those folks who want to continue to have that curiosity and excitement about doing more. Oh yeah, that Calling Bullshit book that Jean just shared, that Jevin and Carl are good friends of mine, and I use quite a bit of their open course material in teaching my class. Yeah.
Excellent.
So
Excellent.
yeah, just great to hear from everyone.
Thank you, Carrie. And by the way, I spent some time with Bates current students and also graduates, recent graduates, people who've been out there for a while. And what we found is Batesies will at least give you 20 minutes to answer a question, etc. Batesies will give you 20 minutes, and we spend some time on LinkedIn. Where do you want to work? What do you want to do? Who from Bates is there? Because having a Batesy put your resume forward or contact a hiring manager is real powerful, especially in these times, because jobs are a little bit scarce right now, but we're finding. Okay. Also, just a little paid announcement. She didn't ask me, but Joselle has a newsletter, and you'll find her on LinkedIn. And I saw that you just published one, What AI Means for Leadership, 5 Skills That Matter Most Now. It just came out, Joselle. So she does have a newsletter out there, etc. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Alex. Alex, we've got about 12 minutes or so before we wrap up. And so if you can there's some great comments in here. If you can just share a few of us, and the panelists can volunteer to answer.
Yep. We got some great questions here, so we'll just get right into it and see how many we can answer. First one, maybe this is Professor Eaton. You can take this one, and maybe Kyle, the second part of this question. But Nicholas Carlini at Google has shown that LLMs do, in fact, memorize some of the trading materials. How can a user avoid plagiarism as well as avoid disclosure of confidential information?
Yeah, that's rough. And then there's what yes. I think number one, we talked about what you do want to share and what you don't want to share. Many of these generative AI systems, in order to get privacy and security that their general models won't train on, you have to be subscribed to them. So in other words, you're trading an aspect of your privacy for free access, because nothing's ever free. And so be really aware about what kind of access level you have. And some platforms allow you to manually edit the settings access that they have to use your input to manually train. And then you got to stay on it, because settings and permissions always change. So be careful and don't violate any policies that your broader work organization has. Those are a couple of things. On the flip side, I think we already talked about verification and so forth. If you're trying to write an original article and you're relying on ChatGPT, click on the link, ask where that information comes from, go and actually read it, use it as a guide rather than the author. Treat it, but you may use it, but question it consistently.
Kyle, anything to add without freaking people out about the privacy?
Yeah, so you could tell Alex knows me well. No, I'm not going to. So I think there's a couple of things history teaches us a lesson here, right? When the internet started and Google started crawling all of our websites, whether you were the New York Times, whatever you were at that time, or just a blogger, right? They were using that without your permission. And we thought at the time that they were just going to do what was right. They didn't, right? And that's a whole nother conversation. The same thing's happening again, right? The New York Times organization is suing Microsoft and OpenAI. There's lawsuits out there right now that are happening. It's going to continue. There's regulation that is being debated and all those different types of things. And so, Professor Eaton's completely 100% correct. What you have to do now as an individual is just be really, really firm with what you share and also what you allow AI to save. Right. So there is functionality in most Gen AI that it will not save these things unless you actually tell it to save these things. Right. Maybe it's doing it in the background. You have to be careful with that, of course. But you can also train these things to use what you want it to use. And you just have to be overly careful. And I would just suggest to everyone, especially if you're a publisher of any sort of materials that you really care about, and you're creating IP you really care about, just be really careful where you put that until we get the regulation that we probably should have learned, in the .com era when the internet became so big. We seem to be making some of the same mistakes.
Awesome. There's another question maybe for Giselle and Steve to answer. I'm concerned about the use of AI at schools for assignments. Students seem to be heavily relying on it to get the answers and skipping the entire thinking process to get to that answer. Wouldn't this create dumber professionals who will have a very narrow grasp of how life works? What do you think?
Yeah, it's evolving. I think I remember being in school and folks said the same thing about the calculator, and they're like, "Well, you're going to use a calculator, you can't do arithmetic." I was with a peer just last week, and they had to pull out their calculator to calculate the tip. So we are less reliant on those things. I'm sure we've all done it. The art of education has to evolve, and I think having that grounded foundation of knowledge and critical reasoning and thinking and discernment is really important. My heart goes out to the teachers and professors who have to reimagine the way to deliver that to students, and then now to students who are just so distracted all the time. It's that art has to evolve. It's not, some people have toyed with the idea of now having the students only take the tests in the classrooms, and take home exams now have a different flavor to it. I don't think the answer is just that easy. I think it's yes and I think we have to go back to the drawing board of how do we develop critical thinking, reasoning, and curiosity, so that, because the information is everywhere. But if you have those three things, then the world is your oyster.
Just a quick
What I would,
comment,
oh,
Steve. I don't know how to tan leather or thresh wheat or do a lot of things which used to be considered, super important
Yeah.
because the tools evolve, right? So we are always very enmeshed with our tools, and we move on, right? New thing. But your point about critical thinking, that's something we never want to lose, right? But sometimes the skills, they become less relevant.
But also what happens is, I see it in the food industry as people get away from cooking their own foods. The onus falls on big businesses and mass markets, and then you get processed foods and all of that. So even us distancing ourselves from some of those, and the whole point of AI was supposed to give us more reason to tan leather and to have our hands in soil growing things, and so it's an interesting cycle.
I mean, at the same time, it only costs in the single digits or low teens % to feed ourselves versus 35%, 50, 60 years ago. So, and you're right, everything good comes with, something that you have to be careful about, but more people eat better, more people eat more and are more sustained, without as high an income level requirement. And so that means more life, more people. And these are all things, I don't know that we really choose, but we got to look at both sides of the coin on that kind of stuff too. But, you're 100% right, by the way, but both is, and is always a good answer. Like I know how to cook my own food, and sometimes I want something quick and maybe not quite so good for me, right?
I wanted to just interject, Alex, on the question around students using AI. I agree with what Steve was mentioning. I'd like to maybe add with a counterpoint. Being that I think it is okay, and I'm a fan for using tools. Again, I'm a non-engineer leading a non-engineering team. I took a lot of coding courses before I onboarded into that team. So you got to know what you're stepping into. But I would say, particularly if you're a student, and I think this also applies to us as alums, I would say think of the long game. And what I mean by that is, we're talking about how do you become even more competitive or even competitive in this new marketplace of talent? I'll share something that happened to me personally and that I see over and over again with companies and kind of top leadership that I work with and coach. You can certainly use AI to prepare. You can have your talking points. I'm sure my co-panelists and I, use our favorite tools to help with these. When you are in the room and you have to present, maybe you want to go the entrepreneurship route and you want to get funding or get advisors, or you want to get that next promotion, or you're interviewing for Kyle's team or Steve's team, right? You have to show up as yourself. Like I am showing up speaking to you. I have a chat open, but I can't do that at the same time. And people respond to others when they are compelling and when they put their thoughts together and when you speak clearly. You can prepare all of that with AI. So I would say if you're a student right now, all good to use it, but know that in the work world, you're in a room with others or or a big bullpen, and you're not going around like using your I mean, we don't do that. I'm in finance, right? I pretty much calculate everything in my head. And there is a kind of, even in that field, when you're using a calculator to calculate 25% of a billion, you kind of have to be able to do that on the fly. So think of it as, you ought to have these foundational skill sets. So use it, but don't leverage it for your day to day, and certainly don't make it be your crutch.
Awesome. We have time for one more question. This is a question that's near and dear to my heart. It's probably also a question that we could have a whole nother webinar about, but it's a question. We've got a couple questions just around the environmental and ethical concerns and issues associated with AI. So just quickly from the panelists, how do we get our arms around kind of some of the ethical and environmental issues associated with AI?
I worry that it's a runaway train. You hear some of the AI advocates say AI will help solve some of these problems. But right now everyone seems to be focused on demand, growing. All of these things use rare earth minerals. The output of an AI LLM query compared to a Google search is multiples more. I don't have the answer. I think conservation is a habit of like everyone's responsibility. But it is a real problem that I'm not sure I hear enough people talking about.
I saw a particular a question to discuss conversations in Maine that are very local specific. So there have, data centers need large amounts of hold is good for data centers, and they're looking to places like Maine and other Arctic Circle locations that are still near high broadband to send elsewhere. And of course, people are coming to Maine asking about putting up data centers in your backyard. It's complicated. I think it's about asking the right questions. The technology is evolving, but electricity use is very high, water use is very high. How do you make sure that the grid stays affordable for everybody else? How do you know or have accountability for whether the systems that they actually end up building are closed looped and not continuously using high levels of water? It's a lot of question asking. How do you know who and what kind of people will get jobs and for how long? What's the accountability? Just keep asking questions. Keep thinking about what your values are for the community you have ahead.
Yeah.
Right. Good. Okay.
It's a big question. Well, I will turn it back over to Chuck. Again, great questions, and we'll try to maybe in the follow-up answer some of the ones we didn't get to.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much. And then just one thing that we've talked about is, well, how does AI differ from Bitcoin? I mean, it's a lot of it's cycles, right? You're burning power, electricity, cooling, etc. So everybody, don't let that let's not get too excited about AI versus all this Bitcoin. What does Bitcoin do? So as that's a whole nother discussion, as Alex mentioned. Well, folks, thank you very much, Professor Eaton, Joselle, Kyle, Steve, Alex. We really appreciate you guys being on, and it's been a great. There's some great comments, some great thank yous, etc. Also, the Bates community, Amy and Marianne from Purposeful Work. I see Ben Peck from the library, and then what our goals, Stephanie Dumont and Stephanie, they're very much our coordinator and associate with the alumni office. What we're going to do is we're going to create a AI group. And oh, by the way, if you've not joined the Bates Alumni and Friends group on LinkedIn, please go ahead and do that, those two, because that's how I found some folks on here. Okay. And then what we'll do is we'll put some responses to all these questions in that. And then also Stephanie will be sending out a survey to kind of get some of your impact, etc. Feel free. I'm Chuck James. I'm in LinkedIn. So if anybody has some questions and you want to come directly to me, and I can moderate that back to everyone. Okay, good. Well, folks, thank you very much for your time. This has been I'm very proud of everyone on this call. I'm very proud of what you contributed to Bates College, and thank you very much for your time today.